What's up YouTube, this is Ryan from AnnihilatorMTG here, and I'm back again with some more Modern. With Modern Horizons 2 being out by the time this video drops and my return from my week off, I decided to play something a little more lighthearted and fun. This week I'm going to be playing Rakdos Unearth. I've experimented with various Rakdos mid-range builds in the past, but this one always seemed the most entertaining to me. The basic premise is exactly what you would expect. We're playing powerful 2 to 3 drop creatures that need to be answered immediately, and this makes the namesake card Unearth extremely appealing. There isn't a creature in this build that we aren't happy to get back. We can put these creatures into 2 groups, the first being our value cards. We're running a 4-3-2 split of Dark Confidant, Dreadhorde Arcanist, and Seasoned Pyromancer. In terms of card advantage, these creatures are fantastic, and since we're running so many, our opponents often can't answer them all. The second group is our heavy hitters. Between Kroxa and Lightning Skelemental, our opponents will regularly be taking a ton of damage, and their hands will be an absolute shambles. Being able to lower our opponent's life total while also attacking their hand is an extremely appealing game plan. The rest of the deck is your typical mid-range shell, meaning that we can grind out games with the best of them. One added bonus is that Thoughtseize and Inquisition are much worse against us than a normal mid-range build. If they take our Unearth, they're leaving us with our insane creatures. If they take our creatures, they're giving us Unearth targets. Low opportunity cost graveyard hate is a must against us, and even then we can just jam our threats. Overall, this deck seems like an absolute blast, so let's hop into the first match and see how we do. Okay, looks like we found our opponent here. Best of luck to you, my friend. And this hand is a little bit land heavy, but we should be fine. Yeah, we'll keep it. They get things started with a Bloodstained Mire. We draw Liliana. Let's play and crack our Polluted Delta, finding ourselves a Blood Crypt. Then we're going to cast the Inquisition. They crack their fetch in response, finding themselves a Watery Grave, and then they cast a Stubborn Denial. Fair enough. Guess we're just gonna pass. They untap and cycle a Street Wraith, then we see a Steam Vents, and it looks like they're passing. We draw even more lands. Let's play another fetch. Then we'll cast Inquisition number 2. We see a Dismember, an Expressive Iteration, a Fatal Push, a Lightning Bolt, and a TBR. I think we take the Expressive Iteration. They cycle another Street Wraith. Then we see a Shadow. During their end step, we're gonna crack the fetch, get a tapped Blood Crypt. We just keep hitting lands, goodness. Let's play and crack a Delta. We're gonna grab a Swamp, then we'll cast the Liliana. We downtick. Then they float a red and bolt the Lily. That's a pretty decent trade. They cast a Thought Scour, then they cycle a Street Wraith, and we see a Polluted Delta. We draw Lightning Skelemental. Let's play it. Then we're going to move in for combat. We swing in. They crack their fetch. Then they cast a Fatal Push. And I guess that'll be that. Doesn't look like they have a play. And we find yet another land. Jeez. Alright, well that's annoying. Let's cast an Unearth. We'll bring back the Skelemental. Then we'll swing in. They hard cast a Dismember. And we're back where we started. Let's crack the fetch during their end step. You have got to be kidding me. Can't say I'm too happy about this one. We've seen over half our lands this game. Looks like they also found one. See if we can do a little bit better. And we find a Liliana. Let's go for it. It resolves. Then we're gonna uptick. They dump a Teamer Battle Rage. And no Lightning Bolt. That's good for us. Seems like they're passing once again. We draw an Unearth. Excellent. Let's cast it. Then we're going to uptick the Liliana. They lose a Thoughtseize. Then they crack their Delta, finding themselves a tapped Watery Grave, and we see a Fatal Push. They've got 2 cards left in hand, neither of which they feel like playing, and I can hardly believe it, but we find another Unearth. Let's cast it. Then we're going to uptick once again. They cast their second Dismember, then they discard an Inquisition, and they're all out. Like clockwork, they draw, then they pass. We drew a Kroxa. Let's go for it. And then they scoop it up. Nice. So in this matchup, we're going to bring in the Surgicals and the Spellbombs in exchange for the Lightning Bolts. I don't think it's entirely necessary, but it's just going to give us that little bit of an edge. Yep, that should be fine. We'll submit. This hand looks super good. We'll keep it. They start things off with a Bloodstained Mire, cracking it for a Blood Crypt. Then we see a Thoughtseize. They're likely going to take the Liliana. They take an Unearth. Sure. We draw a Polluted Delta. Let's play a fast land, and we'll send it back. Seems like they're stuck on a single land. That's good for us. We draw another one. Let's play the Bloodstained Mire. Then we're going to crack it, finding ourselves a basic Swamp. Then we're going to cast the Bob. Afterwards, they hit it with a Fatal Push. Figures. Up next, we see a Mishra's Bauble. They crack it, targeting us, and then they pass. We draw a basic mountain. Let's play and crack the Delta. We're going to grab a Swamp. Then we're going to cast the Liliana. Let's uptick, discarding the mountain. They dump a Gurmag Angler. That's interesting. Then they play an untapped Watery Grave, and then they cast another one. That's pretty manageable. We draw another Delta. Let's downtick the Liliana. Then we'll play a land. Let's cast Unearth targeting the Dark Confidant, and then we'll gem the Dreadhorde. To me, this seems like too many threats for them to deal with, but I'm not entirely sure. They get things started with another land, then they play a Dismember targeting the Arcanist, following it up with a Shadow. I think we're just going to Edict with the Liliana. Then we're going to play the Nihil Spellbomb, crack the Bloodstained Mire, get a basic, and then crack the Spellbomb. We find another Dreadhorde. Let's cast it. Then we'll swing in for 2 with the Bob. That takes them down to 7. They lead with an Expressive Iteration, then double Bobble. They crack one of them. Then they crack the second, and then they send it back. During our upkeep, they draw 2 off the Bobbles, and then they just scoop it up. GG's. Okay, looks like we found our opponent here. Best of luck to you, my friend. And this hand is certainly tempting. I think double Thoughtseize Fatal Push is very good, but the double Liliana and the single land might be a bit too clunky. Yeah, I think we're going to send it back. Now, this is a one-lander I can get behind. Let's ship the Fatal Push and see what happens. They lead off with a Watery Grave, then we see a Mishra's Bauble. They cast an Engineered Explosives for 0, and we see an Emery. Wow. Well, that's certainly interesting. We find Blood Crypt number 2. Let's play one of them, then we're going to Lightning Bolt the Emery. So far, so good. We see another Mishra's Bauble. Then they cast a Cauldron Familiar, draining us for 1, and they pass. We find another Lightning Bolt. Let's play our land, then we're going to cast the Bob. They sack the Bobble, and then we'll pass. Seems like they're stuck on 1 land. They swing in for 1, taking us down to 14. Then they cast a Fatal Push targeting the Bob. Fair enough. We draw a Filter land. Let's cast an Inquisition. They have a Cauldron Familiar, a Fatal Push, a Gilded Goose, and a Witch's Oven. Let's take the Oven. Then we'll cast the Kroxa. They discard the Cauldron Familiar. Then they play an untapped Breeding Pool into a Gilded Goose. They swing in for 1 once again. We draw another land. I think we're going to bolt the Goose. Then we'll cast Unearth targeting the Dark Confidant. They sack the food to bring back their Cauldron Familiar. That takes us down to 12. Before anything else, they swing in for 2. That takes us down to 10. And it seems like they're passing. We have a Bob trigger. We draw a Thoughtseize. Well, this is going to be painful. Let's go for it. In response, they push the Bob. We see a Mayhem Devil. Let's escape the Kroxa. That brings them down to 15. Looks like they drew a Glimmer Void. We draw Seasoned Pyromancer. Let's swing in. They take 3 damage. We bring him down to 6 life, and then we'll cast the Pyro. We find an Inquisition and a Mountain. I have no idea if they can actually get out of this or not, but since they drew another land, I don't think they can. We hit a Liliana. Let's move in for combat. We'll swing in with a team. That brings them down to 3. They block. Then we're going to cast the Liliana, so their board's taken care of. And let's see if they play anything else. Nope, they scoop it up. All right. So to be brutally honest, I'm not entirely familiar with this deck, so I think we're just going to resubmit. And this hand looks phenomenal. We'll keep it. They get things started with a Triome. We draw a Fatal Push. Let's play a Swamp into a Thoughtseize. They have an Engineered Explosives, a Fatal Push, and 3 lands. Let's take the push, and then we'll hard pass. Looks like they're going to play and crack their Polluted Delta, finding themselves a basic Swamp, and then they cast the Explosives. No problem. We draw Bloodstained Mire. Let's play and crack it, finding ourselves a Blood Crypt. Then we're going to cast the Dreadhorde. I really don't mind if they blow this up or not. It's not that big of a deal. Looks like we're going to see another Triome. We draw another land. Let's play it. We'll move into combat. They blow up the Explosives. Then we'll cast the Dark Confidant, and we'll pass. Looks like they're tapping for 3. We see a Mayhem Devil. Then they play and crack a Misty Rainforest, targeting the Bob. They find themselves a basic island, and it looks like they're passing. And then during their end step, we're going to cast the push. As is tradition, we continue to draw lands. Let's play a Lily. Then we're going to uptick, and we'll pass. Looks like they drew an Emery. During their end step, we're going to crack the Delta. See if we can draw a Lightning Bolt. We find another land. All right, let's Edict them. They sack their Emery. Seems like they found nothing. During their end step, we're going to crack the fetch. You have got to be kidding me. Well, this is my life now. Let's uptick the Lily. They dump a Fatal Push. Then we see a Spire of Industry. Let's crack another fetch, this time grabbing a Swamp. We draw a Fatal Push of our own. Let's uptick the Lily. Looks like they had one as well, and they're just hard passing. This is almost impossible to believe. All right, let's keep going. They dump a land. Looks like they're tapping for 3. Here's a Luris. They bring back a Bauble. And finally, we have some action. First things first, we're going to Edict. Then we're going to unearth the Dark Confidant. They crack their bauble. Now they've got 2 cards in hand. Here comes a Gilded Goose. They make a food token. Then we see a Spellbomb. That's pretty gnarly. We draw off the Bob, finding another one. Let's Edict them. And we're taking a bit of a risk here, but I think we just have to go for it. Let's swing in. Interestingly enough, during our end step, they crack the Spellbomb. Then we see a Cauldron Familiar. They drain us for 1. For the first Bob trigger, we hit an Unearth. Then we find a land. Then we draw Kroxa. Let's uptick the Liliana. We'll discard the land. Then we'll swing in for 4. They choose not to block. We'll cast the Kroxa. That brings them down to 10. And I guess we just pass. Well, this is certainly getting tense. They swing in for 1, targeting us. That takes us down to 7. And then they just hard pass. We've got 2 triggers. We hit a land. Then we draw Fatal Push, finding another Bob. Let's swing in for 4. That takes them down to 6. Then we'll uptick the Liliana, ditching the land. They dump a Fatal Push. Let's cast a Dark Confidant. Then we'll push it, jam the Unearth, targeting the Kroxa. We'll stack the triggers. That takes them down to 3, and we'll escape the Kroxa. They're forced to sack the food. That causes their Glimmervoid to die, and it's now or never. They cast a Witch's Oven. Then they pass. We've got 2 triggers. We hit a Blood Crypt, then a Kroxa, and it looks like that'll be enough. They scoop it up. GG's. Okay, looks like we found our opponent here. Best of luck to you, my friends. And this hand seems good enough. We'll keep it. Let's get things started with a basic, then we'll pass. They jam a Blooming Marsh into a Thoughtseize, taking Dreadhorde Arcanist number 1. We draw a Lightning Bolt. Let's play a Blood Crypt untapped, and then we're going to cast the Dreadhorde. Next up, we see a Treetop Village into a Fatal Push. Sure. We draw another Fatal Push, so let's play our land untapped, and then we'll cast the Kroxa. They discard a Godless Shrine, so we're dealing with Abzan. Next up, we see an Overgrown Tomb. They cast a Thoughtseize. Let's respond by hitting them with a Lightning Bolt. They take a push, and then we see a Dark Confidant. We draw Thoughtseize. Let's push the Bob, then we'll Thoughtseize our opponent, take the Assassin's Trophy, and then we'll pass. Looks like they're getting aggressive. They animate the Treetop Village, then they swing in. That brings us down to 11, and they choose to hold on to their land. Wise choice. Let's cast the Liliana, then we're going to uptick. They discard a basic forest. They decide to play the plains, then they animate the village, attacking us. That brings us down to 8. We draw an Unearth. Let's cast it, targeting a Dreadhorde. Then we're going to uptick. They ditch a Thoughtseize, and now we just got to dodge removal. Once again, they animate the Treetop Village, attacking us. We go down to 5. We draw a Dark Confidant. Let's cast him. Then we're going to uptick the Lily, and they discard a Scavenging Ooze. Wow. All right, that's different. Let's swing in with the Dreadhorde. We're going to target the Unearth. We get back Dreadhorde number 2. Then they go down to 7, and I guess we'll pass. Looks like they're going to play and crack a Silent Clearing. Then they play a Nihil Spellbomb, crack it immediately. So there goes our graveyard. Let's see what happens. We've got a Bob trigger, so I think we're going to cycle the Unearth. Then we're going to uptick the Liliana, discard the Kroxa, and I think we have this. Let's swing in. We'll target the Unearth, and they scoop it up. Nice. So honestly speaking, I really enjoyed how that went, so I think we're just going to resubmit. This hand isn't perfect, but I don't really want to mulligan too much against discard. Speaking of which, they play a Blooming Marsh into an Inquisition, taking the Unearth. We draw Fatal Push, let's play a basic swamp, and then we'll pass. They play a basic as well, then they cast a Tarmogoyf. Let's hit it with a push, beautiful. We draw an Unearth. Let's play the Blood Crypt untapped, and then we'll cast the Dreadhorde, hoping that we don't see a Liliana. Next up, we see a Silent Clearing. Guess they don't have a Liliana, as they cast an Inquisition. They take the Unearth, and that appears to be it. We draw Lightning Bolt. Guess we have to get aggressive. They hit the Dreadhorde with a Path to Exile. Nice. We're gonna grab a mountain. Honestly, I feel like that put us in a better position than we would have been otherwise. Seems our opponent found their Lily. They uptick. Let's discard the Skelemental. They dump a Batterskull. We draw a copy of Kroxa. I think we're supposed to go for the Skelemental here, so we'll attack the Lily. It dies. Then we need to sack a creature, and we just gotta dodge another one. Next up, they play a Thoughtseize, no doubt taking the Lily. Then we see a Spellbomb. Not good, but we can always just get super lucky and find another Lily. I think we're just supposed to cast the Liliana and then do nothing. During our end step, they crack the Spellbomb. Our opponent's getting a little bit impatient. Let's see what they got. During their main phase, they crack the Silent Clearing. Then we see a fetch, and they pass. Looks like we draw another Kroxa. Let's uptick the Lily, see what they discard. They discard a land. Let's cast the Kroxa. Then they dump a Lingering Souls. That's going to be annoying. They crack their Marsh Flats for a Godless Shrine. Then we see an Overgrown Tomb. They flash back their Lingering Souls. See what we draw. We find Liliana number 2. Let's downtick. Then we'll cast the second one. Downtick again, and we'll pass. Looks like they found a land. We draw Bloodstained Mire right on time. Let's uptick. Seems like they're holding onto their card. Let's crack the fetch. We find another one. Let's uptick. They discard an Inquisition. Our opponent casts a Collective Brutality to just drain us for 2. Let's crack the fetch. See what we can get. We find a land. Let's uptick the Lily, and then we'll escape the Kroxa. That brings them down to 10. Not entirely sure what they're looking for. Probably removal. They cast a Lingering Souls. Then they flash it back. We draw push. Let's hit one of the tokens. Then we edict them. We'll swing in. That takes them down to 7. They block, and then we'll pass. Let's see if they've got it. They draw Maelstrom Pulse. That'll do. They swing in, taking the Lily down to 1. We find another land. Guess we just have to uptick. Actually, come to think of it, we probably should have just binned that. Small punt, but no big deal. They swing in, taking the Lily back down to 1. Looks like our opponent's thinking about something. No idea what it is, but we'll have to see. I guess it's just play another land. We draw Lightning Bolt. Let's hit their Spirit. Then we're going to uptick. And here's hoping they're just going to keep hitting lands. And they do. They play a fetch. We draw Fatal Push. Let's uptick. We're getting one step closer. What's crazy here is them fetching is disastrous because now a single hit of the Skelemental will do it. Don't really know what they're thinking. Either way, they seem to be passing. We draw an Unearth. Let's cast it. They dump a Fatal Push. Then we lose the Kroxa. We uptick the Lily once again, and we'll pass. Looks like they found a Tarmogoyf. No problem. We draw a Bob. First things first, we're going to edict them. Then we're going to cast the Confidant. And the cool thing about this is if they don't destroy the Bob, they just lose. But if they do destroy the Bob, then that's one less removal spell for the Kroxa. So I think they might be toast. We see a Shambling Vent. All right, see what we can get off the Bob. We find another Bob, then a Dreadhorde. Let's uptick the Lily, discarding a Bob. Then we escape the Kroxa, swinging for 2, and let's see what happens. If they hit a Damnation, they might be able to make this work. Well, that doesn't appear to be the case. We hit another Kroxa. Let's uptick the Lily, and they scoop it up. GG's. And there you have it. As expected, Rakdos Unearth is a ton of fun. This deck definitely misses cards like Faithless Looting being in the format, but it's good to know that even without that kind of hardcore enabler, this deck can still do its thing. Some of you may be wondering why there's no Modern Horizons 2 content this week. I usually edit my matches later on in the week, so playing with the new cards would have been impossible. I've got tons of plans regarding Modern Horizons 2. Some of the fan favorites like Delver and Grixis are going to be coming back with a vengeance, and there's tons of other testing to do, so I hope you'll all stick around for those videos. If you like my content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This stuff really does help, so thank you, and as always, stay safe out there and have a good one.